So many of the families who are moving to Alberta these days, and specifically Edmonton, are telling me that the main reason they're moving here is because of the cost of living. They're looking to shed some of the bills that they have in more expensive places like Toronto and BC and get out here to Edmonton where they're paying less. But are they actually saving money by moving to Edmonton? Well, that's what we're looking at today. We're going to be going into the cost of living in Edmonton coming into 2024. Now, the first part of the equation that we're going to be looking at is the taxes, because you need to know how much you are bringing home before you can figure out how much you have to spend. Now, right up here, I am going to be throwing up the tax brackets in the province of Alberta. Now, for those of you who might be a little confused about the tax brackets, really what happens is any dollar amount that you earn within that tax bracket is taxed at that rate. And then when you move on to the next tax bracket, not all the money you've earned over the course of a year is taxed at that rate. It's just the money that you've earned between, say, $140,000 and the next tax bracket. I've seen people turn down raises at their work because they didn't want to be taxed more. Don't be one of those people. It's just the money you earn between each tax bracket that's taxed at those rates. So as you can see here in Alberta, your first tax bracket goes all the way up to $143,000. So any amount that you earn up to that point is going to be taxed at 10% here in the province. You're going to be taxed up to $170,000 for the next tax bracket. That is at 12%. Up to $227,000 from $170,000, it's going to be 13%. It goes up to 14%, up to $341,000, and then anything $341,000 and above is going to be taxed at 15%. So really simple to understand. And that first tax bracket goes all the way up to $143,000, which is quite a lot higher than some of these other provinces that start taxing you higher at lower amounts. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to throw up a comparison table so that you can see how much your take-home pay would be at different price ranges, at different salaries in Alberta versus in BC and in Ontario. So you can take a look at that and decide how much you're going to be paying in taxes in each of these different provinces. Now, personal income tax is not the only factor in the equation here. We also have sales tax. I'll throw those numbers up here as well. But for sales tax, Alberta is going to have much lower than many of these other provinces. For example, in BC, you're going to be paying 12% sales tax on most of those consumer goods you're purchasing. In Ontario, it's 13%. Here in Alberta, we're just 5%. So much less tax on those consumables, those consumer goods that you're buying here in Alberta versus some of those other provinces. Now, the last piece of the equation is going to be the property taxes. So if you own a home here in Edmonton, you're typically going to be paying a little less than 1% of the property's value per year. So if you have a $400,000 house, then that is going to be about $4,000 a year, maybe a little bit less. In some cities around Edmonton, like St. Albert, that's going to be a little higher, maybe 1.1%. If you're out in Sherwood Park, that's actually going to be some of the lowest in the province at 0.75%. So a $400,000 home, again, would only be about $3,000 a year in your property taxes. So that's going to be the taxes here in Alberta, how that's going to compare to some of the other provinces in Canada, and how much you can expect to take home compared to what you're making. All right, now we are going to be getting into housing, because that is most people's biggest expense each and every month. Now, first, we're going to be taking a look at the rental numbers, and then we're going to go over to some of the purchasing a home numbers. So we're going to start with rentals. These numbers are courtesy of rentseeker.ca. You can take a look. They've got comparison between different cities. So if you're looking at a one-bedroom apartment in some of the major cities in Canada, in Toronto, you're going to be paying almost $2,200 a month. In Vancouver, you're going to be paying all the way up at $2,700 a month. In a place like Montreal, you're going to be paying about $1,600 a month. In Calgary, you're going to be paying $1,700 a month. And they say here in Edmonton, you're going to be paying $1,300 a month. So already a lot less than all these other major Canadian cities. In my experience, you can go even down to $1,000 in a one bedroom, or even down to $900. I've seen a lot of things that rent for cheaper than that. Again, these are the averages. These numbers aren't going to be perfect. You can find things for higher in these cities. You can find things for lower as well. But these are going to be the average numbers. If you bump that up to a two-bedroom home, you're going to be looking all the way up at $2,600 in Toronto. You're going to be looking at $2,700 in Vancouver. Over in Calgary, you're going to be paying $1,900. In Montreal, you're going to be paying $2,200. And here in Edmonton, you're only going to be paying just under $1,500. So you can see that it's much more affordable to be able to rent in Edmonton versus some of these other cities. I've even seen people be able to get into single family homes for that $1,500 to $1,800 range, which I doubt is possible in many of these other major Canadian cities. Now let's look at buying a home in each of these cities. I know that's a dream for a lot of Canadians that feels out of reach, especially if they're in some of these major metros like Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and others. here in Edmonton that is still quite affordable. Let's look at just how affordable that is. Now, I'm going to throw the numbers just for Edmonton up here on the screen so that you guys can see some of this. Now, note that these numbers are subject to change. Obviously, real estate markets fluctuate all the time. Right now, we are in December of 2023. And so typically November, December, you're going to see that things are a little bit cooler than in other times of the year. It might heat up in spring. With all the people we have moving out here to Edmonton right now, I do anticipate that maybe we're going to see a lot of activity here, especially in the spring of 2024 and beyond. We've seen that Calgary over the last couple of years has seen a huge increase in population from the people moving from Toronto over to Calgary. I'm anticipating we see the next thing in Edmonton over the next couple of years. Now, as of right now, again, in the end of 2023, the median home price here in Edmonton is $428,000. Now, that is single detached home. That's something that you really can't get anywhere else in Canada, especially for all the major cities. If you are looking at a semi-detached, so a duplex option, that's going to be at $371,000 for the median price. The median price on a townhome here in Edmonton is going to be just over $280,000. And the median price for an apartment style condominium is going to be $155,000. Now, again, you can get into these options for a lot lower than that as well, depending on the age of the home, depending on the condition of the home. That's going to be the averages for here in Edmonton. Now, just for comparison's sake, I'm going to throw up here some of the median prices for single detached homes in other major cities throughout Canada, so you can see just how much you're going to be saving here in Edmonton if you're looking to purchase a home. So as you can see with these numbers up here on the screen, in Toronto, you're going to be paying just over $1.2 million for your average detached home. In Vancouver, that's going to be just over $2 million, which still blows my mind every time I see numbers like that out in Vancouver. How are you guys doing? Are you okay? In Calgary, that's going to be just over $600,000 for the median detached price. So you can see just how much more affordable the housing is here in Edmonton. I'm also going to throw up the numbers here as well for what that would look like at your current average interest rates, what your monthly payment is going to look like. And that's just going to give you an idea of how much that's going to save you each month as you're paying less for your home here in Edmonton than you would in some of these other major Canadian cities. Now, we know that housing is not the only expense that goes into your day-to-day. We're going to be taking a look at some other cost of living things here in the city of Edmonton. A lot of these numbers are going to be courtesy of numbeo.com. Great little tool where you can look up some of the common goods that you're buying month to month, and it's going to give you some idea of what it's going to be like. You can even compare between cities on the average prices of some of these cost of goods. One thing that we're going to be looking at is restaurants. Now, according to Numbeo, it's going to be about $25 for your average sit-down meal. That's not going to be for a fast food meal. Something a little bit more expensive than that is going to be about $25. Now, if you're looking for a meal for two people at a mid-range restaurant, 3 courses, get yourself an appetizer, bring on the main course, and then a dessert, that's going to be about $100 for 2 people, which I would say is fairly accurate. My wife and I actually went to a great Mexican restaurant the other day. It was only $50 between the two of us. We got an appetizer. We each had a main course and a dessert. So that was a great option as well. You can find it for cheaper, but I'd say in general, you can plan on spending about $100 for 2 people at one of those mid-range restaurants. And then in terms of a combo meal at a fast food place, it's going to be about $12, which I've seen is anywhere between that 12 to 15 range is probably pretty accurate. Now, in terms of groceries, some of the common items that you're going to be looking at, they say a liter of milk here in Edmonton is going to be about $2.25. I find we buy the 4-liter jugs. Typically, it's around $7. A loaf of bread, they're saying, is just over $3. You can find it for a little bit less expensive or a little bit more expensive than that as well. A carton of 12 eggs, about $5. That feels about right. I know these things, it can seem pretty trivial when you're just looking at specific items. Most people are buying different things. For ourselves, a family of 5, we're spending about $1,000 a month on groceries. I know some people who have that down at around $700 to $800 for a family of 5. Some people who are spending a little bit more at $1,200 or even a bit more than that. But typically you're around that range for groceries for a family of 5. I know everybody grocery shops differently, so it's hard to come up with a specific number for that. Again, you can take a look at some of these things on Numbeo and see what your cost would be. It doesn't have everything, but it does have a lot. Now, in terms of transportation, I know that's a really important thing for a lot of people. The gas here in Alberta is going to be cheaper than most other provinces in Canada, if not all of them. Typically for gasoline, you're looking right now at about 1.35 per liter. That's going to be across the city of Edmonton. It gets cheaper when you get out to some of the other surrounding cities. I know Spruce Grove is notoriously cheap. We always fill up when we find ourselves out there. But yeah, about 1.35 for regular gas. Premium, you're looking around the 1.5 range. and that's going to be able to fill you up here in Alberta. Now for transportation, for public transportation, you're looking at about $3.75 for a one-way ticket. That's going to be on the LRT line. That's also going to be on our buses here as well. A monthly pass on the bus is going to run you about $100. They have discounts for students and seniors, but for the average person, you're looking to pay about $100 a month if you're going to be exclusively taking the train or the bus. Now we get into utilities, which is another very important one for a lot of people. For our family of five, I know this is going to be really anecdotal. Some people have different rates with their different utility providers. For us, we're spending anywhere between $300 and $400 a month on the gas, the electricity, water, and all that kind of stuff. One thing I will mention, because I've had some people move over here from Toronto and get a little bit surprised, with your water bill, you're also going to be paying for the garbage disposal that the city comes and picks up every week for you. You're also going to be paying for the sewage systems and making sure that all that water gets back to the treatment plants and then back out. So that was a surprise for some people when they saw that on their bill. But usually family of five, you're looking around $300 to $400 for utilities. If you have a smaller household than that, you can look even as low as $200 for those home utilities. Again, the gas, the electricity, the water and the sewage, the garbage disposal. Now, I will mention that most of our heating here in the furnaces is natural gas. So that will be one of your more expensive bills when you're out here in Edmonton. And then some of those other utilities, mobile phone plan is typically going to be around $80 a month. That's going to get you some good gigabytes, some good data plan, and then your unlimited calling and texting. And then for internet, you're probably paying around the same $80 to $90 for your high-speed internet, and then maybe another $70, $75 if you want to get cable options as well. I know most people are moving to streaming. I still like to watch the sport, so I've got the cable going. We pay typically about $150 for our internet and cable together, and then about $80 per person on our cell phone plan. So that's going to be your utility costs here in Edmonton. I'm sure that's the same across a lot of Canada. The utilities for the home might be a little bit different, but again, $300, anywhere between $200 and $400, depending on your usage and the size of your family. But what do you think? Would you guys save money by moving out here to Edmonton? I've spoken to a lot of people from Toronto, Vancouver, Victoria, and they're all surprised, shocked at just how inexpensive it is to live here. So if that's something that you think would benefit your life and you want to move out here to Edmonton, live out your Canadian dream and buy a home, definitely get in touch with us. We are one of the top relocation teams here in Edmonton. We'd be happy to help you move and find your perfect home. My information is in the description, and make sure you check out one of these next videos so you know exactly what it's like when you move out here.